Let's review the principles of art and design. The principles are ways artists organize elements of art in works of visual art. They are balance, pattern, rhythm, emphasis, variety, and unity. Balance is how the parts of an artwork are arranged to create a sense of weight or interest. Common types are symmetrical, asymmetrical, and radial. So we know that symmetrical means even on both sides. Asymmetrical means heavier on one side than the other. Radial means coming out from the center and working its way outward. In these examples, you can see symmetrical, radial, and asymmetrical weight used in this composition to balance the image. All three of these ways are successful, and there are different reasons why you would want to use one over the other. Emphasis is when an artist arranges a composition to place greater attention on certain areas and objects to create a feeling in an artwork. We sometimes call this a focal point. There are different ways to create areas of emphasis in your artwork. You might want to contrast a shape with its surroundings, create contrast in the temperature of colors, warm and cool, use darker or lighter value. You might want to draw attention to converging lines, so intersecting lines in your artwork. You might want to isolate an object, so keeping something alone by itself. And you might want to increase the object's intensity of color. So bumping up that saturation of hue is going to create emphasis in your artwork. In these examples, you can see placement and contrast add emphasis. Proportion, the relation of one object to another in size, amount, number, or degree. So you can see things are exaggerated here in this sculpture of a spoon with a cherry. Hierarchical, that's going to give us really graphic, kind of simplified images. Or you have highly realistic renderings like we see in many of Da Vinci's artworks. Unity is how elements and principles all work together to create a sense of oneness or wholeness in a work of art. So essentially how all the different pieces come together to make an artwork look finished. In this classic painting that many of us know, you can see repeating colors, shapes, values, and textures that really relate. So you can see all the colors are muted, the texture is slightly rough in their skin, their clothing, even the barn behind them. In Van Gogh's Starry Night, we see this continuation of line and movement working in a similar horizontal direction with an emphasis vertically here on this cypress tree. And here we can see unity again in color palette and brushstroke in this painting of two girls. Rhythm is combining elements through repetition, alteration, or progression of an element to create movement in artwork. So here you can see this alternating pattern in this yellow and blue fish bird design. So it's using repetition and creating a lot of movement. Hopefully you're seeing kind of X going visually. Your eyes are kind of darting in an X pattern because of the use of that repetition and of color. Here you can see a lot of movement in the repetition of the shape of the person, the form, and kind of stretching out in that radial composition that we talked about earlier. pattern is, of course, repeating elements or a combination of elements that are used in a planned way. So specifically using blue, yellow, blue, yellow, blue, yellow, or creating the same marks over and over again. So looking at all of the teeny tiny brick marks that have been painstakingly drawn with a very fine tip pen is a planned use of pattern that also creates unity throughout this artwork. And movement is referring to a combination of visual elements that move the viewer's eye through a piece or create a sense of action. So you're going to kind of look at an entire scene through movement. We often use diagonal lines in our compositions to move our eye around. It almost makes this kind of shell shape. Here we can see this gesture is creating a lot of visual movement. Your eye is kind of following this sculpture of a man who almost looks like he's twisting. Variety is the use of several elements and principles to hold a viewer's attention. So instead of just focusing on repetition or